哦，要这样做、啊。它的操作方式有点特别。
And I'm sorry about that. I'm just gonna start at the beginning with the house.
哦，第一人称啊！它操作方式好特别哦，而且没有那种什么过多的按键的提示啊。哦，它字是这样子的。
Inside the mailbox were bills from 7 years ago, marked urgent, open immediately.
什么东西啊？哇，他的报纸都没有来领哎，这是他们家的吗？如果是的话，可能住得很远哦。
I hadn't been back since my brother Lewis's funeral.
剪辑。
In her will, my mother left me a key, but didn't tell me what it unlocked.
游戏会不会太暗啊？调一下好了。这样。
Maybe she thought I'd know, or she thought that the mystery would be
哦，
enough.
那一栋啊，那是什么房子啊？造型好，那是高塔吗？游戏的音效不错哎。
The truth is, even after I inherited the house, I never thought I'd come back to it. But now I had questions about my family that only the house knew the answers to. The woods around the house have always been uncomfortably silent, as if they're about to say something but never do.
游戏名称叫做伊迪芬奇的回忆豪宅，应该是一个互动剧情的游戏吧？我以为是恐怖游戏，结果好像不是。哦，篮球框。哦，另外一条路是这样走过来的啊，就是绕过来的啊。好暗哦。
The house was exactly like I remembered it, the way I'd been dreaming about it.
它的房子好特别哦，好像那种违章建筑的集合体哦。上面还有一个更高的，这都还不会垮掉。
As a child, the house made me uncomfortable in a way I couldn't put into words.
好像是什么妙妙屋哦，米奇妙妙屋。哎、这是我们家就有的椅子哎，一模一样。
Now, as a 17-year-old, I knew exactly what those words were. I was afraid of the house.
害怕？为什么？是因为这个家发生什么事了吗？
I hoped the key might unlock the front door. It didn't.
啊什么？靠，不是吧？那这个能干嘛？我这钥匙是什么作用？
Looking in, I felt like the house itself had been waiting for me.
车库能录吗？不应该不行。它能提示的就会出现一些白点，对不对？那这个门呢？哦， 哦，钻狗洞啊？不是吧？这个没关啊。万一那什么奇怪的东西钻进怎么办？通常这个不是会锁上吗？狗洞这个。万一有什么小狼仔钻进来，不死定了？香。哦，木工哎。
For the first time in years, I felt like I was home. But instead of a family, there were just memories of one.
他这个厨房好怪异哦，又是书，又有餐具、厨具。那些纸本不就沾到食物的味道了吗？然后这些食谱啊，像
Like how only one restaurant would deliver to our house, so we had Chinese a lot.
中国餐馆。
Or how after Louis started working at the cannery, we all got sick of eating salmon, except our cat, Molly.
三文鱼，他哥哥死了吧？所以说他们才离开这个房子。为什么？我靠，是怎样？
The table was still a wreck from the night we left. It was like a bomb had gone off, killing everyone but sparing the furniture. My mom was the only one of us who could imagine Great-Grandma Edie living in a nursing home.
他真祖母住在养老院啊？哎，这手机吗？哦，这车库。
Nothing in the house looked abnormal. There was just too much of it, like a smile with too many teeth. Even the fireplace had a story. Edie told me the bricks came from the original house after it sank.
以前房子留下来的。哦，哎，这个蛮酷的哎，这个锯子上面还有一些画作，好特别哦。应该说，这本身建筑物的设计就已经很特别了，蛮漂亮的哎。 而且内容好丰富哦。
Great-Grandpa Sven built a music box for Barbara, along with the rest of the house.
芭芭拉。
Mom always told me to stay out of the basement, so I wasn't too surprised when the key didn't fit.
他这钥匙是妈妈给他的啊，可是他是想让他的孩子知道什么？
A lot of things got left behind in the whirlwind of that last night.
他们走得很匆忙哦，很多东西都没有打理好，就匆忙的离开了。
My mom wasn't much of an optimist, but she never stopped believing that my brother Milton was alive.
这个是他的二哥吗？还是大哥啊？他还有一个哥哥哎，两个哥哥啦，一个死了，一个失踪，剩下他最后一个。他这个哥哥怎么头戴的是什么东西啊？是帽子吗？靠，这个门是什么？为什么要这样做啊？封印着什么恶魔吗？
Edie told me once that every Finch who ever lived is buried somewhere in the library.
你们都书哎、他这个门被封印着什么？那是什么东西啊？蜡吗？密封起来了。 还上了锁。我像不想让别人打开一样。
After Milton disappeared,
有人家是这样子吗？就是说墙壁都贴满着相框。
Then Edie retaliated and drilled peepholes.
等下那边门，这边坏掉了。我会看到自己的身体，我是孕妇吗？我感觉肚子好大哦。有可能哦。
Whenever people ask me about my family, the first thing they always want to know about is Barbara.
芭芭拉，她是电影明星吗？哦，还有2楼
Mom must have locked the third floor stairs on the night we left.
这边还有洋酒。
Barbara was a child star for 2 years, until America grew out of it.
抛弃了她，是过气的吧？明明童星。
Edie's father Odin built the original house.
这是什么？
The last time I was in Edith Sr.'s room, I was 10 and she was painting my portrait.
我看一下啦。
As a kid, I just assumed every house had peepholes and sealed rooms you weren't allowed inside of.
这是浴室吗？它地上那什么东西啊？珊瑚礁吗？连浴室都要封起来，为什么？一个美国，然后在太空。
My grandpa Sam spent 7 years sharing a room with his dead brother, Calvin.
分2边。这是小孩房间吧？感觉很像哦。就是他们嘛。仔细看他的细节蛮多的就看他的风格，就大概知道房间的主人到底是什么样的性格了。这就全家福嘛，对不对？酷哦。
I spent a lot of time playing in Great Uncle Walter's room. I think my mom sometimes regretted not sealing it up.
哇，这房子好漂亮哦！哇，可是好空哦，这边就几个画而已，很漂亮有个海洋的造型。这边还有老房子是这栋房子的画吗？这是火车，可是为什么要火车啊？有点格格不入
Lewis told me there were secret passages, but I never believed him. Turns out, my mom was really good at keeping secrets.
哦，还有一个。
Now it was time to find out what my mom had been afraid of.
他把这个门跟周围的混合在一起
From the paintings on the wall, it was clear my brother Milton had been here before me.
他的兄弟来过这里。这是一张黑猫，是吗？房子好多这种夹层哦。这是他的画吗？
Reading this, maybe it sounds like I had a plan, but I had no idea what was behind that door. just like I had no idea where all this was gonna lead.
哎，保存了。
I grew up looking at Molly's room through the peephole. Being inside for the first time, I felt like I'd stepped behind a painting.
哎，主角好像是还在住的时候，这个整个房间都会封锁起来了，所以说他从来没有进来过。
Molly's gerbil had a tiny bedroom with its own even tinier gerbil cage.
他抽屉居然还有一个那个窝。这是什么？海星？这个小女孩是想当生物学家吗？她的很多那种标本哎，很像不像是一般小女孩会有的嗜好。哎，一看到海哎。
I got the sense Edie had spent a lot of time here before my mom sealed the doors.
他的日记。
December 13th, 1947. Dear Diary, I'll be gone soon, but I wanted to tell somebody about what's gonna happen. It started when Mom sent me to bed without dinner. I woke up and I was starving, so I looked around for something to eat.
寻找吃的。
My Halloween candy was all gone.
吃完了，赶快补充啊
Mom, can I come out now?
Sweetheart, it's late. Go to sleep.
The gerbil food was dry, but I didn't mind it.
啊，那个沙鼠嘞，怎么不见了啊？被他吃了吗？而且好恶心啊！他竟然吃那个胡萝卜。哎，独角兽。
I thought about eating Christopher, but I held back.
他吃鱼，他吃沙西米啊。
I ate a lot of things that night.
靠，不是啊，连这个都吃，这能吃吗？这是什么？这好像那个万圣节的，不是万圣节啦，圣诞节的一个装饰品，对不对？这是什么？不是吧，小妹妹，
I kept eating
这你也
and
吃啊？
eating.
牙膏也吃？哦，靠，不是吧？他是有多饿啊？
Then I heard chirping outside my window. It was a barn swallow going back to her nest. I reached out for her.
啊，有铁链！
And suddenly,
不是，
I was a cat.
我变成一只猫了。我是在做梦吧？
I tried to be quiet, but the bird was really scared.
怎么跳啊？哎，哦，哦，我能跳的话就能跳过去啊，不能跳不过去。
Mom and Dad didn't even look at me.
我应该不会摔死吧？哟哟，哎，还蛮有趣的，这个切换方式，好奇幻哦。
I could tell she was getting really tired. Now I was up in the big tree. I promised Dad I wouldn't climb it anymore. All I cared about was eating that.
他的门窗之所以会锁起来，是因为他的父母可能会担心他爬窗户啦，可能是有前科在，然后把自己摔死。
I gobbled her up.
哟，哎，他吃了。
And suddenly, I was an owl. First, all I heard was the wind. Then I heard little teeth nibbling in the grass.
我是要找吃的吗？不是吧？我还要当猎人啊！我可以抓东西。
Rabbits.
哦，兔子！哎，靠，没抓到，又有，好多、哦！抓到了。
I imagined his face looking up and seeing mine through my talons.
第一人称。
I swallowed him up, and I didn't chew one bit.
狼吞虎咽，
Then I
虎咽
flew
哎，
off to find something bigger.
更大的猎物。小妹妹是很喜欢吃东西，对不对啊？就是说太饿了，开始不管那是什么东西了。
A mama rabbit.
兔妈妈，抓到！
She was almost too
喜欢
busy to hear.
喜欢狩猎的快感。
I started choking, but I couldn't stop eating. And suddenly, I was a shark.
靠腰嘞，这怎样啊？我变鲨鱼了，我能动啊！这是什么东西？是鲨鱼玩偶吗？哟，那不会摔烂吗？
I rolled off a cliff and into the ocean. Now, I was hungrier than ever. I wanted fat, juicy seals.
哟，yummy yummy。
I tore off her flipper, and it tasted really good.
美味极了，哇，这小妹妹有点恐怖哦。游好快哦。
I grabbed on tight. But I was so hungry, I jumped out of the water. When I opened my eyes, everything had changed.
是什么？章鱼吗？还是蟒蛇啊？这是什么东西？我要拉近距离了。
Now I was a monster, and I smelled
怪
people
兽。
everywhere.
哦哇，我知道结果了，它要吃人啦！这是海怪吧？对不对？
I was
有一个人。
big, but I moved real quiet.
他是怎么吃人的啊？他那么大只。我觉得我比较像蟒蛇哎，我看不到它的身体啊，身体就是这个而已啊，不是吗？
I wanted to stop, but also I didn't.
哎，他唱这首歌，那个唱歌的人，他唱歌是那个黑旗里面的一首歌，哎，仔细听的话，我要吃这个人怎么吃啊？就这样吃，碰到就可以了，对不对？他开始不满足于吃小动物了，开始要吃更大的东西了，人类。
After the last passenger, I was still hungry. And
他也是很
across the
饿。
water, I smelled something new. Something I had to have, so I swam towards it. I slithered onto the sand, and the good smell went into an old pipe.
他这个转角，哎，不对，这不是那个小女孩的房间吗？
I got closer and closer.
哇，要把自己给吃了，要跟小女孩玩那个触手了。我的肚子。
All my stomach started growling.
这个咕咕叫什么意思啊？
And suddenly, I was me again. I held my breath for a long time, but I couldn't hear anything. I think it's waiting for me to fall asleep. But it's not going to wait much longer. It needs to feed, and we both know I will be delicious.
我也很美味。 What the fuck！ 哇，这小妹妹好恐怖哦！把自己也吃了。
I'm not sure if I believed all of that, but I'm sure Edie would have.
哎，那这样子的话，她也死了嘛？那这个小妹妹应该是食物中毒啦，要不然就是淹到了，淹死自己了，或者是啊，更猎奇一点啊，就是说把自己给煮了吃了。 就是我们的任务就是要观察每个房子的主人啊，他生前是怎样的死法，或者是他的个性、他的故事这样。哎，我不会在这跳吧？哦，不是。
This will be obvious later, but my mom never told me any of these stories.
当然啦。
Edie would have, but Mom didn't like bringing up the past. Though, when we adopted a stray kitten, she was the one who named it Molly.
玛丽。
I spent a lot of time in Great Grandma Edie's room.
哦，他在蒸祖母的，还有那个氧气瓶哎。
Her room was like a museum.
是什么？哦，日记底下了。他还有一把刀哎，军刀。这什么意思啊？两只鸽子。
Edie knit me a new pair of gloves every year, just in time to replace the old ones. Louis died a week before we left, but Edie had already started to memorialize him.
哦，这是那个啦，树木的木轮啊，然后做成一个画布。好多鸟笼哦。哎，仔细看到上面都有名字哎，该不会是他们全家的吧？对不对？这头蛇该不就是刚刚那个小女孩的形象吧？
Edie gave a big interview about a mole man living under the Finch house. My mom was furious.
什么东啊？鼠人
I hadn't thought of myself as Edith Jr. for a long, long time. When Edie told people Sven was killed by a dragon, she could also have said he was building a dragon-shaped slide that collapsed. She could have, but she didn't.
滑梯。哦，是这个吗？哎，好酷哦！它是木工嘛？这是那是什么国旗啊？是瑞典吗？还是瑞士啊？哦，就那个啊，龙形滑梯，然后它坠落了，然后还刚好被拍下来。哇，这好恐怖，好惊喜，好恐怖哦！
One summer, they evacuated the island, but Edie refused to go. For a few weeks, she was a celebrity.
哎，真的不错哎，他这个房子真的细节超多的，光是这个就知道什么情况了。而且你看这个好漂亮哦，这个鸽子真的往外飞哎。我也想要家里有一个这样的东西。
For 500 years, the Finches have been famous throughout Norway for their fortune and misfortune.
哦，切换哦。
Odin Finch buries the latest victims of the family curse, his wife Ingeborg and their newborn son, Johan. On January 7th, 1937, he set sail with his family and his house, hoping to leave the curse behind.
啊，这是什么东啊？他把房子整个都迁走了，然后外面的都围观这个奇观。
But 40-foot waves off the coast of Washington send the house and Odin to the bottom of the sea.
我靠，他爷爷还在上面，然后在救他的房子。
Odin's daughter Edie, with husband Sven and baby Molly, step ashore on their new home, Orcas Island. Odin Finch is the first to be buried in the new family cemetery.
啊？
His daughter Edie is already dreaming of a new Finch house.
哦，这是客厅嘛，对不对？那是他的烟囱，我有印象。他们很有钱，可是也很不幸。好奇葩哦，把房子都迁走。
Whatever's wrong with this family, it goes back a long ways.
他们家很久前就经常有这种怪事发生啊。可是好像也不是什么大不了的事啊，就是意外死亡啊。这死法都好猎奇哦，好诡异哦，就是那种一般人不会遇到的问题啦，他们全都遇到了。哎，我问过。 那我现在怎么走？哦，这边。
Even in her 90s, sometimes Edie seemed a lot younger than my mother.
是他吗？嗯，哦，哦，就是那个房间，浴室啊。它这是什么地毯啊？真的好不会形容哦，这是有点怪异耶。珊瑚礁啊，医药盒。有些小孩的东西耶，是说小孩子会进来这个地方，然后玩吗？
The only trace Grandpa Sam's first wife Kay left on the house was the pink bathroom.
粉红色的浴室。
It was a pretty big trace.
哎，哦，
There's a secret in this bathroom.
秘密。
It's in the last place you would look. It isn't in the cupboard.
哇！
It's hidden in this book.
我靠！他把那本书本的机关跟现实的机关融为一体。哎，这是什么？暗示吗？照片对不对？
Sven gave Sam an old camera he'd refurbished. He never put it down.
可是这也很怪异耶，为什么浴室后面会有一个冲洗相片的一个地方？哦，他自拍，他真的很喜欢，还是相机，他也不自首。 哦，我能上去啊？这边没有跨不过去。这个这边的话，一个是想当军人，一个想当太空员嘛，宇航员呐。
And that he never talked about him.
为什么？
I guess my grandpa didn't like history any more than my mom did.
哇，这好，哎，这好漂亮哦！
How I Want to Remember My Brother by Sam Finch. The thing I remember is that when he made up his mind, that was it.
他腿受伤了吗？打石膏嘞！
My brother said he'd die before he ate another mushroom. And he did. At Barbara's funeral, we swore we'd never be afraid again. And he wasn't. I think Calvin always wanted to fly.
他想要飞翔。我大概知道他的死法了。
Calvin, dinner's ready.
他会飞出去，不对？
But
他
that
想到
day,
飞翔来了。
he finally made up his mind to do it.
那一天，他终于下定决心了。
I told him going around was impossible. Maybe if I hadn't said that,
也许他就能活下来。
I'm not gonna tell you again.
maybe if the wind hadn't picked up, then maybe he'd still be here. But I doubt it. I think he'd already made up his mind.
下定决心了。
That's what I want to remember
越
about
高
my
了。
brother.
写下这个文章的是他的弟弟嘛？我，天哪，这太疯狂了啊！
The day he made up his mind to fly, and he did.
我看到鸡皮疙瘩嘞！我天啊！记录着他哥哥的死亡。
Strangely familiar. When I was younger, I remember trying to do the exact same thing.
哥哥他想飞啦，他想飞上太空，现在他如愿了。
Edie roped off Calvin's half of the room.
好酷哦！他的房间很像那
Mom
种
said Greg
要
Sam
塞，
enlisted at 18 and never
可以玩
stepped
要
foot
塞
in the
包的
room
游戏
again.。
你们看这边还有一个那个什么吸盘的那个枪械的子弹。那另外一位嘞的故事哎，他的弟弟啊，怎么没有？他弟弟应该是从军的吧，对不对？对啊，我觉得应该是哦。他的整个床单都是迷彩，还有一些相关的图案啊、暗示啊。上回。哦，哦，这好有趣哦！它是一个虫哎。叮叮叮叮叮叮。哎，哦，往上拿啊！我以为是往前。这机关真多哎，这个好。
The passages were a pretty tight fit. They'd obviously been built for smaller hands and bellies.
哎，啊，这是那个我说的那个洋酒那个地方嘛？啊？哦，他那个什么明星啊？
Growing up, I always thought of Barbara as a child star.
嗯，然后嘞，这是他的奖项吗？他要有出玩偶啊，可是玩偶笑得好恐怖哦。这是什么恐怖片吧？他的灯还是那个聚光灯，可是感觉他不像坏人，你们知道吗？感觉他的行为，感觉像是要给他什么东西啊？因为你像那个这种《天空之城》里面那个机器人啦，你以为他是坏人，结果他是好人，他是想帮助你而已，感觉啦，这个怪物，只是我们不理解而已，误会他了。 靠，不是吧？这都发霉了吧？都变这颜色。
I never thought about how hard it must have been for her afterwards.
有多辛苦？当然啦，同性的结果都是这样子，除非你能找出另外一条路啦，不然你一旦过了他的那个年纪，你就很难找出出路了。这是啥会啊
？Of all the stories people wrote about Barbara's death, I'm surprised Edie saved this one.
Old Jack here with another ghastly tale inspired by America's most unfortunate family. I'm calling it The Surprise Ending of Barbara Finch.
芭芭拉的惊喜结局。
As a child star, Barbara was famous for her scream.
尖叫声而闻名。
She was all washed up, a has-been. But in a lucky break, she'd been asked to perform her signature scream at a local convention for monster movie fans. It was just the boost her career needed. Unfortunately, her scream hadn't aged well.
Getting better. I think you just need the right motivation.
Her biggest fan and current boyfriend, Rick, was about to demonstrate when...
这更好。
That was a great scream.
It was Barbara's father, Sven. He'd slipped into a table saw and had to be rushed to the emergency room.
啊，台剧
So Barbara got stuck
那很
babysitting
严重
her
哎。
youngest brother, Walter. Her convention comeback was cancelled.
Okay, I'm hearing frustration, but I'm not hearing terror. What if I tried...
A gang
沮丧
of hoodlums in Halloween masks have been terrorizing Orcas Island tonight. Police are urging residents to...
That came from the basement.
You're right! Also, I loved your delivery on that. Why is your basement door locked?
Because my dad likes making puzzles and secret passages. There's a key hidden in the music box. The secret is to keep winding and winding until finally the key pops out.
哎，是那个音乐盒，
I'll be back in a sec.
那个是钥匙，假
20
的。
minutes later, Rick hadn't returned. So Barbara went to look for him, right on cue. She reached for the music box.
哦，我们可以操作哎。
As she wound the key, she listened for Rick, but the house was silent.
哎，这不是那音乐吗？夜光光，心慌慌。
She found Rick's crutch and imagined the worst.
也不错，这些配效不错哦。音乐很给力。哎，我可以打。
The gang's leader is the infamous Hookman killer, Dr. Carl Hamill, who impaled and then ate his
就是
family
他
10
父亲
years
嘛
ago tonight.，
也不对啊，那个手应该是父亲的手吧？他被锯到了，所以说流血。哎，真的要小心啊，不然的话真的会受伤，自己负责啊。
The old fridge rattled and grew still.
哎，
Rick?
Barb, relax. I was just trying to scare you to help you find your scream.
Well, I'm not scared, Rick. I'm furious.
愤怒。
Then act furious. All I'm getting from you now is that you're hurt and confused and you're...
She threw him out, but she kept a little something to remember him by.
Barb, have you seen my other crutch?
And she was still holding it when she fell asleep watching the late picture show. Hours later...
12点。
Barbara! Walter, what's going on up there? Ah! Okay, I'm coming up, but if this is a trick, you're dead, Walter.
哎，什么？哦，这是那个，这个我有看过。晚上为什么家会有这种东西啊？谁会在家里摆这种东西啊？请告诉我。你们都堵住了。
Walter had vanished, but his bedside radio was still on.
Orcas Island police describe the man as 6 feet tall, with a steel hook for a hand.
铁钩。
Residents are urged to lock all doors and windows and notify the police of any suspicious activity.
What?
Barbara turned, saw the hook man, and was speechless. He was quite smashing.
关上，锁上。
And who he was, he couldn't get enough of Barbara.
明白。
Okay, Barbara, there's gotta be another way out of here.
哎，哦，这是他那个房间哦。
That night, she played her part beautifully.
哦，这是那个爱吃鬼的那个小女孩的房间啊。这个时期的房间都没有上锁哎。
Molly's door hadn't been opened in years. The hinges groaned.
哇！
He wasn't moving, but she sensed the story might
哦，所以说这个围栏
yet.
就是这样子损毁的啊。哦，它漫画的剧情啊，跟现实是有一点有牵连的。我跟你说，这是幻想的，你们知道吗？只是有些家具的摆设有点不太一样，像这个东西，哎，等等，
Vanished. She listened for his breathing, but all she heard was. At the door, she heard whispering. It was coming from inside the house.
靠！啊！
Oh dear.
Surprise! 东东啊！
The monsters had come to surprise her. For Barbara, it was a dream come true.
这搞屁啊！这什么东西？
Saw what kind of monsters they were, and she realized what was about to happen. She was going to be famous. And with her final breath, Barbara Finch gave the performance of her life. I wasn't there myself, But I hear Barbara was magnificent.
令人叫绝。
Poor girl. She had a taste for stardom. But
喜欢当明星的滋味。
so did her fans. Of course, the police blamed it all on
喜欢吃明星的滋味。天啊！
the same night.
这是凶杀案吧？
Little Walter, hiding under his bed the whole time. He took it all pretty hard.
他目睹了整个过程啊。
Another story. As for Barbara, tucked inside the music box is all they ever found of her. Her ear.
我靠！
Now that's what I call a real eerie tale.
靠腰嘞，这是怎样啊？我靠！我天啊！
Edie told me all Barbara wanted was to be remembered.
这太猎奇了吧
That comic was. Maybe what Edie saw was a happy ending. 我猜他应该是因为什么被人谋杀了啊？就是刚那个什么钩子男啦，谋杀了之后，就留下他的那个耳朵。哎，是这个吗？有些故事可能有点虚构啦。 I guess now I know why Mom didn't like me playing with the music box.
哎，天黑了吗？怎么那么暗？就这个
It's funny.
断掉。
All those times I played with the music box and never found the basement key. 好暗哦。哦，有了。你要一直转啊，它才会打开。一般人真的想不到。这是电箱吗？哎，这边有阳光。洗衣间。哦。 Mom said the basement was off limits, unless I wanted another tetanus shot.
哦，就这一台啊，锯到手了。
I saw Edie sneak down to the basement once, carrying packages.
Okay.
I thought maybe she was hiding presents. It turned out she was hiding a lot more than that.
后面还有一个空间。我操！
I remember asking Mom once about where Walter had gone. She said after Barbara died, he got as far away as he could.
靠，不是吧？它的建筑物下方还有个地堡，这么多食物，可以吃好几年的。
If there's a pattern in all these stories, I think it's that none of us has gotten very far.
那挂着一幅画，是想模拟说外面是一个户外吗？可是仔细想的话，你一生都关在这个像监狱的地方，其实很压抑啦。有时候人还是要稍微户外走。2005年，就是他嘛，现在的样子。哦，他有兴趣是做模型啊，火车模型。这什么声音啊？还有浴室。上面都是一些吃的。我觉得他姐姐的死亡对他造成心理压抑、心理的阴影一定很大。也就是说，他最后的选择。哦，还有空间哎！我先拜读一下他的故事啊。
Goodbye, everyone. I can't believe I've been down here for 30 years. On that first day, after the shaking started, I didn't think I'd survive a week. But after a few days, I settled into a routine. That's what kept me sane. Having a schedule, living for today.
那面包罐头吗？这什么
I
东
always
西？
expected to be dead tomorrow.
1976年，这是第4天了吧？每天重复的一件过程。
Even a monster on the other side of the door starts to feel normal. Almost friendly.
又是这个食物。
And then one day, everything just
啊，过那么久了，2005年的，
Stop.
就是刚才那个时间点。
Whatever that thing was, it was gone. Maybe it got tired of waiting. Or maybe I just got tired of being afraid.
他吃的是什么东西啊？那是蛋吗？还是什么东西？
It's been a week
很
now,
光滑哎。
the longest in 30 years. I'm done waiting. I have to leave while I still can. 哇，下面还有好多书籍哦。有些模型的零件。 I know it's out there somewhere.
他一个人新建的这个地方吗？就是挖了这么大的一个洞。
And Molly. And Calvin.
这是他吃完的垃圾吗？被丢在这里啊？
Maybe this is all a mistake. But I need to stop living the same day, even if it kills me.
他想摆脱一切，对不对？他已经受够这个日子了。他破墙而入，
Whatever's out there, I want you to know I'm ready for it.
他已经做好准备了。
I'm going to appreciate all of it, especially the food. I don't mind if I only have a year left, or a month, or a single week. I'd be happy with one new day. I can already imagine the sun on my face.
哇，他是被撞死的。迎接他的阳光的不是阳光，是火车头的阳光。车灯啊。
Walter died when I was 6.
他
I
只
can't
活到了
believe my mom
2005
never
年。
told me he was down here. I'm sure my mom was trying to protect me.
Okay.
Maybe she was afraid I'd end up like Walter. But if she never told me about an uncle under the house, I can only imagine what else she was hiding. I don't want to make the same mistakes she made. Trying to bury something that's still alive. Now that there's only one of us left, or maybe 2.
2个人。
I thought it was time I heard the stories
他
for
肚子里的
myself
孩子吗？
and found out what happened to everyone else. But now I'm worried the stories themselves might be the problem.
哎，这好像荒
I
废了
really。believed so much in a
啊
family
对啊，荒废
curse.
了。
We made it real.
这是缅怀那位遇难的死者吗？就刚刚那个人，对啊，年份是一样的。我猜他之所以那火车没有来，是因为航线有问题啦，路线有问题，是说就改别路线了。直到他们把这个铁轨修好，才开始通行。啊，可是现在怎么又坏掉了？荒废了吗？而且仔细一想的话，它的左侧是陆地耶，怎么变海洋了？地质活动吗？现在是什么东西？那什么漂流木吗？
I don't know if I should even be writing this.
对啊，可能有一些是虚构
Maybe
的
it'd be，better
有些
if
是
all
真
this
实
just
的。
died with me.
真实的部分应该就是他
But
撞
I
死
thought
自
you
己
should
了，
know
把
about
自己
your
撞死了。
family. And the history you're a part of.
前面那什么东西啊？那是漂流木吗？那边有一个废墟，该不会他祖父的那个房子吧？对不对？在前面还没有烂掉啊！
Though to be honest, I feel as lost as you probably do right now. I think the people in these stories believed them, for what that's worth. you look at the house, had that history of imagination and stubbornness and madness.
对啊，
Any of it seems
疯狂历史
possible.，
太疯狂了。哎，是不是那个小弟弟出事的荡秋千吗？他从这里飞出去，然后把自己也给摔死了。哎，走哪？这边吗？
I think we've been surrounded by death for so long, we've just gotten used to it.
我们习惯死亡。
What kind of family finishes building a cemetery before starting the house?
建好墓地。确实啊，一般人是不会这样
It's
做的。
embarrassing for me to admit this, but the
但这
pet
就是事实。
cemetery made me more uncomfortable than the human one. 3 of the gerbils were mine, and 2 had been my fault.
连宠物的墓地都有哎，有些是狗，有些是猫，对不对？还有兔子，还有青蛙。
Sven built the house, but it was Edie who designed the cemetery.
这是爸爸的墓地。这是什么？哦，是刚刚那一位的吗？他终于摆脱了。哎，这个不错哎，这个墓地做的蛮用心的。它还有一个微型的世界。是哪一位啊？哎，他们站在一起是说他们是夫妻咯，还是兄弟啊？哦，不对，应该是夫妻啦。他爷爷嘛，跟他的奶奶，还有就是那个荡秋千把自己摔死的那个兄弟，爱吃鬼的小女孩，对不对？据说这边是一个家族的墓地啦，他们一家庭的。然后后辈的应该是后面哦。
monument had been Edie's idea. My mom was always trying to move on, but for Edie, the past never went away.
他们想挽留他，就要回来，结果他
She could see it poking out of the water at low tide.
对，好像真的是哦，那个房子在前面沉没了，就差一点成功了。
Edie said she dreamed about the old house every night. Edie's side was always easier for me to understand. But the older I get, the more I can see where my mom was coming from. Her dad had been pretty strict, but it wasn't enough to save her brothers. She was just trying to do better.
是他爸爸跟他另外的两个儿子吗？他这就是谁？蜡笔。
She lost 2 of her brothers, just like I did. I get why she tried so hard to protect us.
这是什么东西？王冠吗？
We never found Milton's body, So my mom insisted we were putting up a monument, not a tombstone.
纪念碑，不是墓碑。
There's so many things I wish I could ask my mom now. Part of me thinks this is what she wanted all along. For me to come back someday and find everything out for myself.
Eh, 这是那个小鸟
But looking back
猫
on
猫
it
吃小
now,
鸟的那个地方吗？
if she told me there was going to be so much
不
climbing,
是吧？这要走过去啊！
I never would have come when I was 22 weeks pregnant.
哎，我不是有生育吗？怎么敢做这种事情啊？疯了吧！万一掉下去受伤，然后
I never met Grandpa
流产。
Sam, but I think he and my mom had a lot in common.
哎，烤箱哎，
They were both pretty intense.
这是谁？哦，他老爸房间嘛。
Instead of hiding from death, Sam seemed to go out of his way to meet it.
哎，这是那个什么硫磺岛战役吗？有点像，可是有点不太一样。他老爸参加过战争嘛？是吗？靠，是怎样啊？小猫捉松鼠。是不错啦，可是游戏的画面有点偏暗哎，你们调亮点啊。靠，好像有点糟糕哎。游戏自定义的亮度有点，我一直都不是很喜欢呐，有点偏惨白。啊，紫心勋章，哇靠！他老爸是英雄啊！他老爸很多勋章哎。尤其是那个，还是有，他是什么样的阶级啊？上尉吗？
Sam spent his life shooting photos, but Mom said he got nervous being in front of the camera. I guess we're all afraid of something.
他正在帮他测量他的身高，好吧？啊？
Dawn, I promise you'll never forget this weekend.
Yes, sir.
These memories are gonna last a lifetime.
What?
Am I gonna have to shoot anything?
It's a hunting trip, Dawn. Shooting is strongly encouraged. Perfect.
It's gonna rain the whole weekend, isn't it?
是有拍到什么东西吗？对不对？
I will never forget this weekend, Dad.
That's the spirit. Okay, got it.
I'm gonna take some pictures, okay?
Just be careful. That camera's older than you are.
Aw.
好，走掉。
Definitely should not have drunk all that. Hey!
太继续样子。
That's a keeper. Hold still while I take a picture of you.
I'm just saying, I'm not always gonna be here, Dawn. You'll need to remember this stuff, if you want to survive.
I'll be fine, Dad.
You know who else thought he was gonna be fine?
Some guy who died.
Dawn, I'm being serious.
I know, Dad. You're always serious. Doesn't being out here make you want to chill out?
Well, to tell you the truth, I haven't been out here in 20 years.
他们全家是要
Dawn,
打
don't you
猎
think
嘛
you could find something more interesting to photograph? Last time I was with my brother Calvin. Man, that was a great trip. Your grandpa Sven taught us how to fish, how to build a fire. We found an old logging trail. There were deer everywhere.
Dad!
Good eyes, Dawn. Before you take the shot, let me get a picture of you.
Oh.
Dad, I...
Just breathe. Turn off your imagination. Focus on your target. Let me get behind you.
Do I have to do this?
Dawn, you don't have to do anything. But if you want to survive, you'll need to be strong. Great shot, Dawn!
还在哭哎、他亲手了结他的生命的。
I'm proud of you, Dawn. Always remember that, okay?
哦，我要赶快过去。然后等下悲剧发生了嘛，对不对？
Dad, it's twitching.
哇
I think
That's
it's
totally normal, Dawn. Just focus on the camera. Try not to think about...
Dad!
我靠！然后他老爸摔死吧？
Of all these stories, that's the one I wish most that my mom had told me.
这太让人伤心了。自己目睹自己的父亲死在自己眼前，而且还是以这种死法。哎，我们在天花板不对。
After Sam died, my mom and Edie got really close. They'd both lost a lot.
Okay. 这边有个婴儿房哎。 啊？ 么有一个逃生路线的标示啊？这是什么意思？这边有路哎。
I can't imagine my mom ever writing poetry, and yet.
这个小哥很帅哦，鸡冠头。
A poem for Gus, who always said the wedding was a bad idea. Our father never hit us kids, at least not very hard, before the day my brother said with teenage disregard that he'd be dead before he'd see a wedding in our yard.
带着风筝。
My father made him come, of course, but Gus stood far apart, just flew his kite and bottled up the storm inside his heart. I tried to talk him out of it, but though he'd never met her, we don't need a stepmom were the words that I remember.
Jim.
When the time for photos came,
这是有一
Dad
个
ordered
印第
him
安
to
的
come
图
here,
腾哎，
but Gus declined
可是好
to
特别
as a
哦。
sign held up his middle finger.
竖起了中指，好叛逆哦。
The wind picked up, and panicked geese appeared and quickly went. But all the humans did that day was go inside the tent.
大家都离开了，就他还在放风筝。
The rain came down in buckets then, but no one seemed afraid that nature might destroy the tent our dad had crudely made. The thunder sounded much too close and full of angry power. But all my father said to us was, make the music louder.
这不错哎。哎。
I wish that I could truly say I thought about you on that day. Out there on the beach alone, just you, the wind, the sea, and foam. But I didn't. Until we found you.
他的另外一个这个兄弟的死法，我想象不到哎。
Mom told me once if I was a boy, they were going to name me Gus.
想象不到，我觉得他应该是那种被自己放风筝啊，然后没注意到旁边的什么东西飞过来，把自己砸死。哦，这么年轻啊就遇难了。哎，他的怎么是这种报告啊
Dear Kay, do you remember the way Gregory used to laugh when he thought he was alone? Like something funny was happening, but only he could see it.
什么意思啊？为什么放那边就没声音了
That's over, Gregory. It's time to... Hold on, sweetie. Hello? Sam, I told you I don't want to talk right now.
我能控制这个青蛙。
I know you did everything you could. Maybe if I hadn't called that night.
Damn it. Hold on, I don't want Gregory to hear this.
哦，我可以驱动。
I wish he could have told. And he'd want you to be happy too. Good luck.
希望你也开心。
Love, Sam.
他应该很自责啦，当年打的那些电话，结果造成他母亲没有顾到他，然后把自己淹死。啊！靠，攀岩啊！
My mom moved up to the loft after her brothers died. At the time, it was as far away as she could get.
哎，刚刚打猎的是他母亲嘛？哦，所以他不是他爸爸啊。那现在是他妈妈的故事哦，对不对？
She spent a summer building houses in Calcutta, where she met my dad, Sanjay.
长这样啊？等于是说，我们先挑战了他爷爷还有他曾祖父的故事，然后还有他舅舅还是叔叔啦故事，然后现在轮到他的家庭啦，他的妈妈，还有他2个大哥的故事，这样子。哪里啊？这是非洲吗？哦，靠，它是这个单杠。
Religion was another thing my mom never talked about, but I think it helped her a lot after her dad died.
宗教。哎，他妈妈没有故事啊。
My mom moved to India a week after graduation and got a job teaching English.
搬到印度。哦，这是印度的地图啊。
Lewis was born a year later.
好的，掉下去妈死定了。
When my dad died, I don't think Mom knew where else to go. I'm sure Edie was happy to have her back. And to see kids in the house again. The house had to get a little bigger, but Edie was used to that. And for a while, things were good. Almost normal.
这个房子还有这么大空间啊，可以容纳得下这种地方。哦，他们全家福哎，中间的是他嘛，那个小孩子。 婴儿那个，哦。
The beginning of the end was Milton's 10th birthday, when Edie gave him a castle.
城堡。 城堡好像有点不太牢固哎，好像会垮掉一样。
I think Edie was happy to finally have another painter in the family.
一位画家。 这是变色龙吗？我突然想到一件事情哦，我们经过的时候，去每个房间的路上都会看到一些图案嘛，什么猫的图案啊，南瓜图案啊，该不会就是他二哥留下来的线索吧？对不对？有可能哦，他二哥搞不好以前就已经走过那些路线了，就他嘛。母笔小画家
Milton Finch in The Magic Paintbrush。
怎么啊？不是？哎，对啊，怎么读啊？哦，这样。哇靠，这个翻页式的漫画哎，动画啦。其实动画就是这样子播放的啦。他离开了。他的画怎么那么的简陋啊？搞屁哦！他的故事怎么那么简陋？就这样子而已。他离开了这样。他画了一扇门啦，然后就像消失了。
Mom spent months searching for my brother. Then she sealed the doors. Whatever Milton had found in the house, Mom didn't want it getting out.
我猜他的二哥可能是因为发现了家族的一些问题啦，什么被诅咒啦，或者是运气不好、不幸什么的，想逃离这个地方。像上面的建筑物怎么那么的像搭建的贫民窟啊？下面的建筑物很漂亮，可是上面的建筑物怎么越来越简陋？可是内部的装潢却又很好看，毫不搭嘎哦。
Until Mom got him a job at the cannery.
找了一份工作，家里蹲。这是艘船哎。
Lewis's room smelled very, very familiar. That part of him lived on.
他的房间好魔幻哦，可是看久了很透，你都不觉得吗？这些五彩缤纷的色彩，看久了其实不太舒服。上面都是，这是那个什么东西啊？吸烟吗？那是什么东西？大麻还是什么东西
？Lewis and I spent a lot of time playing games together, but he was surprisingly bad at them. He died a lot.
这是哪一个牌子的游戏机？ 哦，不错哦，双屏幕，双屏幕。
Dear Mrs. Finch, as Lewis's psychiatrist, I can understand your desire for an explanation. As I see it, the trouble began in January, shortly after we convinced your son to seek treatment for substance abuse. Newly sober, I believe Lewis first noticed the monotony of his daily life. He kept working at the cannery, but he withdrew part of himself. In our sessions, I saw the same behavior. His mind began to wander. I asked him to describe
它是，
it.
这个很棒这个是左右摇杆同时移动，右摇杆操纵鱼的切头流程啊，左摇杆是移动左边那个虚拟的那个人物。
He said he started small, imagining a labyrinth. He'd feel his way about.
玩起来好特别哦。
Bats and toads.
他在上班的时候在幻想啦，自己是在那个异世界，
And things that have
有点不专心哦。不过也没办法，工作很单调，就这样子啊。
He knew it was all in his head. But he took it very seriously. I had hoped he'd find himself.
开始幻想有色彩咯，开始变成立体咯。
But he found something more.
靠腰真的立体起来了。
I worried about him then. Daydreaming at the cannery. I spoke with his boss. But he said Lewis had become a model employee. Methodical, tireless, focused.
专注，是因为他只是在做那种
like a whole new Lewis
流程的而已啊。
So I let him go on.
就是切头，然后放在那个流水线上。
I even encouraged him. It seemed very promising at first.
实际上，他的兄弟只是脑子已经
told me he'd made a new friend.
在别的地方了。新
On
朋
the edge
友
of a city he named Lewis Topia.
靠腰，他在把虚拟的
He built
人
the
物
city up slowly, brick by brick.
搬到现实社会来了啦。说什么交朋友，
And he
实际上
made
是幻想出来的。这首乐师。
And songs for them to play. He talked about starting a band. And he was always humming something. Every day his imagination grew stronger.
日渐强大。
He no longer spoke at the cannery.
沉默寡言。
But his chopping was as reliable as ever. Then one day it struck him that all the cheering crowds, even the stones under his feet, were all in his imagination. So he could do whatever he wished.
哦，这边，哦，我也说走那边。
He held an election for mayor.
市长选举。
And he won.
马里奥啊！
They begged him to stay, but his mind was already wandering. It became a game for him. He'd conquer a city, then immediately push on. New Louisville. St. Louis. He started drifting away from our reality.
我们只是在经历他的遭遇啦。
Minneapolis.
你在幻想，然后边做这些乏味的工作，很机械式的操作而已啦。啊，光。那母亲来了，想劝说他回到现实，可是他听不进去，他已经沉迷于其中了。哇，他的整个画面都快被占满了哎。俊俏的王后，漂亮的王子，怎样
？Handsome queen. The queen was on her own quest for
邪恶的毒龙，才不要哎！我要彩虹。
Radiant rainbows. He followed the sound of her.
这什么东西啊
？Electric sitar. His chase led him to a golden palace east of the sun and west of the moon.
哦，我们抵达了。
Even then, his logic remained sound.
啊，跑这么快
He knew the world was all in his imagination.
啊，他明白了，可是已经深陷其中了。
But he was so proud of having created it. In his own eyes, he'd become something greater than a king. For someone who'd never known success in the real world, I think it was overwhelming. And then it struck him that the real Lewis was not the one chopping salmon, but the one climbing the steps of a golden palace.
哇，他已经搞混了现实与虚幻的位置了，他沉迷其中了啊。
My imagination is as real as my body, he told me. It was hard to argue with him.
啊，什么？靠腰嘞！呀，是卡住了吗？等一下，是卡住了吗？哎，怎么卡住了啊？我看着看着卡住了。好奇幻哦！我们就像主角一样，然后右手边做着流水线的工作，可是左手边正在操作他的幻想。 啊，重来啊，不是吧？哦，好吧，哎，没办法啦。
Dear Mrs. Finch, as Lewis's psychiatrist, I can understand your desire.
而且在玩的时候，你完全没有那种
As I see it, the trouble began in January.
就是没有那种困难
convinced your son to seek treatment for substance abuse. Newly sober, I believe Lewis first noticed the monotony of his daily life.
真有乏味。
He kept working at the cannery. But he withdrew part of himself.
他不在这里了。
In our sessions, I saw the same behavior. His mind began to wander.
刚开始的幻想都是黑白的。
He said he started small, imagining a labyrinth. He'd feel his way about.
摸索前进。
Then something moved.
我可以不管鱼吗
？Bats and toads.
有龙。
And things that have not names.
然后这边就开始出现一些有色彩的东西了。
But he took it very seriously.
从平面图再到立体3D。
But he found something more.
开始立体起来了。
I worried about him then.
我很担心他。
I spoke with his boss, but he said Lewis had become a model employee.
模范员工。
Methodical, tireless, focused. Like a whole new Lewis. So I let him go on. I even encouraged.
他的幻想越大了，那个范围
It seemed very promising.
遮蔽一半了。
He told me he'd made a new friend.
新朋友，一条虚幻的狗。
On the edge of a city he named Lewis Topia. He built the city up slowly, brick by brick. Then he made musicians.
这音乐不错哎。
And songs for them to play. He talked about starting a band. And he was always humming something. Every day his imagination grew stronger. He no longer spoke at the cannery.
沉默寡言的。
But his chopping was as reliable as ever. Then one day it struck him that all the cheering crowds, even the stones under his feet, were all in his imagination. So he could do whatever he wished.
可以做任何事，即便是幻想。
He held an election for mayor. And he won. They begged him to stay, but his mind was already wandering.
还会挑战更大的冒险
It
呢
became a game for him.
这次我不要选皇后啦，我要选
Conquer a city, then
王子。
immediately push on. New Louisville. St. Louis.
这个路易斯他已
He
经
started drifting away from
开
our
始
reality.
沉醉其中了。
Minneapolis until one day he forgot to go home from the cannery.
忘了
Even
从
as
罐头
his
罐头
mother
回家，
pleaded with him, part of Lewis kept sailing on.
母亲劝说的也没用，他已经中了阅读了啦，他中了阅读了，无限阅读。
In Lewis
我选王子啊，
he heard
不
rumors
要选
of
王后了。
beautiful prince.
漂亮的王子，这怎么反过来了吧？怎么会是漂亮的王子啊？应该是俊俏的王子啊。漂亮的王后啊，我们是反过来了。
The prince was on his own quest for
邪恶的毒蛇
sinister serpents.
我选一些我没有选过的选项啦。
He followed the sound of his
竖琴
silver harp. His chase led him to a golden palace east of the sun and west of the
太阳
moon.
之东。
Even then, his logic remained sound.
啊，这叫漂亮的王子啊！
He knew the
原来
world
要是
was
个肥
all
宅
in his
肚子还那么大
imagination.。
靠腰嘞，我被
He
骗
was
对
so
不对？
proud of having created it. In his own eyes, he'd become something greater than a king.
更伟大的人。
For someone who'd never known success in the real world, I think it was overwhelming. And then it struck him that the real Lewis was not the one chopping salmon, but the one climbing the steps of a golden palace. My imagination is as real as my body, he told me. It was hard to argue with him.
好，哎，什么？哦，这是现在路易斯他的现实状态，地上都是血，臭死了。
Began to forget the world we know.
这是他的柜子嘛？还有吃剩的中国食物，哎，还有电玩。那是什么东西啊？什么叶子啊？大麻吗？很像哎。哇！切剩的鱼就直接扔到水里啊，任由它浮走。
I think it pained him to remember Lewis, the cannery worker.
切头机，大家都回家了，只剩下他在那边还在切鱼。
He began to despise the man with a royal contempt.
王室进行藐视所有人。哎，大哥，你的鱼嘞？他终于已经认不清现实了。在现实工作，确实有些东西很无聊啦，一直做着流水线的事情，很机械式的操作啦。所以说，你脑子会想一些其他的东西，可是也没有到这么严重啊。
I still thought I could save him.
救他，救不了的啊。
Even after he said he was being crowned king over all the lands of wonder.
奇迹王国的国王之后。
The palace would be packed with his companions.
哇，大家都好开心哦！我要成为国王了。
Including the wise Calico who'd insisted on advising him.
智者三色猫，是这一只嘛？他们的家猫，对不对？天啊！我到，它这个地毯是输送带，我现在注意到。他的王子正手捧着王冠，等着他。
There was only one thing left to do.
哇！我天啊！我要砍头吧！低下头，他把头伸到他的切鱼头机器里面，对不对？哇，疯了啊！咔嚓！我们都知道了。
Your son was a kind man who will be missed by all of us who knew him.
请节哀顺变。
My brother was really cool. I wish you could have met him.
哇，每一个都死得好，怎么讲啊？真的很奇怪，尤其是他的这位兄弟。
Lewis and I spent a lot of time playing games together, but he was surprisingly bad at them.
他的这个大哥好像是有点精神有点问题啦，想服用点药物，可是好像也治不好。
On the way back from Lewis's funeral, my mom told me to start packing. She waited until the day before we left to tell Edie. I'm not sure if she wanted to make it easier or harder.
仔细看的话，里面能够传宗接代的家人啊，他们的房子会一直往上涨。就像游戏中这个家族的族谱一样，越后代嘛，你的房子会住得越高，这样子。这蛮有趣的设定哎。那我猜啦，他肚子里的孩子应该会住在更高的位置，对不对？哎。主角是出生在1999年，那个被火车撞死的那个人，他死亡日期是在2005年，哎，表示说他有6年的时间。跟他的这个亲戚还在生活在一起，直到他被撞死。
Mom ended up leaving everything behind.
为什么？哦，全家福哎！他们家中唯一的活下来的人剩下主角了吧？其他人都死了。嗯，哎，还出书哎！
What happened that night had been coming for a long time.
酝酿了很长时间了。
But it had to end one way or another. All that's left now is to tell you about that last night.
这是他的房间吗？ 好矮哦！他写下他自己的故事吧。
That whole last day, Edie just watched us pack and didn't say a word. Until supper, when she raised her glass and said,
"To our final night together, and all our final nights apart."
Grandma, you know what I said about alcohol. Some of your medications are very
Edith,
specific.
I left a present for you in the hallway. Why don't you go open it? The grown-ups have to argue now.
I'm sorry, you're right. We're all leaving tomorrow. Let's just enjoy our last...
I'm not leaving.
Edith, you're excused.
他奶奶不想离开了，这个住了半辈子的房子，那我要动了哦。
The power had been shut off that morning, but Edie always had plenty of candles.
他们
When my mom
没有缴
said the
电费吧？
library, I don't think she knew about the other entrance. Or
另一个
that
出口
Edie had a key to it.
啊？哇，这书房好窄哦。
The thing you're afraid of isn't going to end when you leave the house.
事情不会结束。
Edith has a right to know these stories.
My children are dead because of your stories. I think it's best if Edith and I leave tonight.
我觉得不可能哦。诅咒还是会继续下去啊。
Okay?
什么都不会改变。
Dear Edith, there's so many stories I wish I could tell you, but there's only time for one. This is about what happened on the night you were born. That night, the tide went way, way out. It was the first and last time I ever saw the old house aground. There'd been an earthquake out in the middle of the ocean. They called it the lowest tide in 1,000 years. God, it smelled awful.
这真的吗？
I've seen that house every day of my life. But I never thought I'd go back to it. When the fog rolled in, I lost my way. I got turned around. For a while, I wondered. I started seeing things.
怎么有路啊？害死他爷爷的路。
Things I'd forgotten had ever existed. But when I saw them, they felt like old friends. That night, a lot of things came back to me. Or maybe I came back to them. Things I can't explain, but that I need you to try and...
Edith, what are you doing in here?
It's mine.
Edith!
Mom, you're gonna rip it! Let go!
I
kicked and screamed, but
没有读完
Mom dragged me to the car. I never saw Great Grandma Edie again. The next morning, the van came to pick her up, but she was already gone.
她已经走了。哇，那是他们最后一晚见面的。
We both tried to make the best of it. A few years went by.
Oh, 我要移动，这是个字哎。
My mom didn't like to talk about it, but she started getting sick a lot. The rest happened pretty quickly. She got better for a while, and then she didn't. And then I was alone.
不久，他母亲也病死了。
The last Finch left alive. Until I found out about you. I'm still not sure what to tell you about all this. If we lived forever, maybe we'd have time to understand things. But as it is, I think the best we can do is try to open our eyes. And appreciate how strange and brief all of this is. This journal was supposed to be for you. But now I hope you'll never see it. I just want to meet you and tell you all these stories myself. But I guess if you're reading this now, things didn't work out that way.
Eh, 这个是在出生吗？小孩在出生，对不对？
This is where your story begins.
小孩子正在从他的子宫里面跑出来。
It's a lot to ask, but I don't want you to be sad that I'm gone. I want you to be amazed that any of us ever had a chance to be here.
我会这样讲是因为我听到心跳声啦。哇，不是吧？他那个妈妈挂了。只留下他的儿子，还有这个房子而已。1948年到2013年，这是什么意思啊？这是 作人员吗？现实社会中应该是没有这么不幸的家庭吧，出现各种意外死亡。玩起来不错难怪会有人说这个游戏是一种艺术，游戏的艺术。它每一个家族的故事都是一个小单元啦，其中有一个我比较喜欢的，就那个芭芭拉啦，那个女童星那个故事，好有趣哦。漫画变成可以互动的一个玩法在。也有他的大哥啦，边切鱼然后边幻想，